All right, the BBM launch week party carries on, bringing in experts around the industry here. We got one of you guys' favorites today, obviously from stealing bananas, stealing signals, and ship chasing. This one might have Nez sweating a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Nez is he's on the chopping block if this guy comes through today. So without further ado, Mr. Ben Gretch, what's up, my friend?
How we doing, man?
Doing well, man. Doing well. We were just chatting behind closed doors there that haven't heard from you since the marathon stream. You guys did a marathon live reaction on Stealing Bananas, 4.5 hours there. But since then, have you been able to get in the draft lobbies? Have you been taking a look at ADP? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I did the long first round, and I got real drunk in 2023 for the first round show, and so I wasn't going to get as drunk this year. And I did drink less, but I still got really drunk. And then I had to do the round two show, day two show, all of rounds 2 and 3 with Sean Siegel over on the Rotoviz YouTube, and that was tough to labor through that on Friday. So that was. If you want to watch me just like in pain for a few hours, that's where you go. And then, I got a chance to draft with him a little bit on Stealing Bananas yesterday. We did 3 drafts. I think we've only released 1. There'll be more coming out on our feed. A lot of really good talk there. It's cool, man. The first week, I had some stuff I wrote up before the draft about some slows that I did that I thought there was some interesting ways to play things and some angles, but obviously there's just so much information that comes in on the draft. And so there's some stuff that I already thought was maybe not right, some pricing that I thought was off, and then you get all of this additional information, and it really does feel this first week like there's just, I mean, I'm not gonna be like pretend like I know everything, but like for how I want to play it, there's a lot of stuff there that I'm like it's very fun to pick off a lot of things that I think are wrong or available to the drafter. And I'm sure everyone, no matter how you play, feels that way because it is a little bit just, whatever you want to call it. There's not an equilibrium yet, right? We're early.
Yeah, exactly. It's the definitive IKB window, right? It's like the most exploitative part of the BBM landscape draft window is if you know better at this genuine spot in time, you know considerably better than the field does when ADP, kind of gets more tethered later in the draft window. Good to hear you can get some volume in here nice and early because as everybody knows, being a good UW boy there, you cannot draft in the state of Washington. It had a couple of my buddies who have been longtime fans of yours saying that I should introduce you as Oregon Trail today because of your draft lineage, your travels to have to go to draft.
There you go.
What do you think about the old Oregon Trail?
When you said some of your buddies, I was wondering, and you said the Oregon thing, I thought that was some type of Oregon Ducks reference or something. So
I would never do that to you. Never do that to you.
No, yeah, the Oregon Trail thing is great. I love that. I do have to make the trek down to Oregon. When the reason I got in some slows in the pre-draft period was we were on vacation for the kids' spring break. We went down to Disneyland, so that was great. But like, yeah, I mean, it's an excuse to like plan some travel, right? Like, I'm gonna figure out some ways to get out of state one way or another. But last year, yeah, I literally just like one time I drove straight down to the closest point on the Washington-Oregon border, drove across the Columbia River, parked at a gas station, entered like 50 drafts, and drove home. It's like a 7-hour round trip, dude. It's like 3.5 hours down there. It's kind of brutal. But
that is incredible commitment to it because I mean nobody can ever shun you for volume when you are doing that level of effort to get said volume in.
Yeah, I'm a morning guy. I like to get up early, so I think I left at like 4 a.m. I was like, I'm gonna get back in the morning. It was like a Saturday, right? Like I got kids. I can't be gone all day. But I left super early, beat all the traffic out of the city in the morning. But yeah, it's like, I better have some pods I want to listen to. I'm going to be on the road all day here, at least for a while.
Hey, well, as we've stated before, anytime you need, you want to be in on the BBM, we're happy to oblige and be that vessel for you to draft alongside with. So, without further ado, let's make our way in that general direction. Actually, Jack's saying that his sister lives in Bellingham. I'm making the trip down to Bellingham next weekend. There's a country concert at Riley Green, and he's at where the Everett Silvertips play. So actually, I've never been to that arena or anything before, but it was a wedding present to some friends of ours. So we're coming down for the weekend there.
That's cool. Yeah, Angel of the Winds Arena, I think it's called. Yeah.
Oh, actually, that's a legit story here because Nikki did the most girl thing ever. She sees that it's called Angel of the Winds, like arena or whatever, right? So she books us a room at Angel of the Winds Casino, thinking they're adjacent. And then I do my due diligence, looking at like the travel plans, 2 weeks ago, and being like, okay, let's make sure this is all in order. And it's like, man, we're a 35-minute Uber from this place. There's a hotel down the road, right? So,
oh, that's great. Yeah, it's right. The arena is right in downtown Everett. There's probably plenty of hotels right around the corner. The casino's off on a reservation a ways outside of Everett. That's great.
Yeah. Lauren's saying something that I've said to you for years now is
I got to get my passport. I know my passport's expired. I got to get it updated, but I have looked it up. That's a shorter drive, and I got to get the passport updated. But the plan was in 2024. That should be the drive that I should be making rather than driving down to Oregon. But last I dug out my passport. I haven't done international travel since I think 2017. It's been a little while for me.
Pre-COVID,
yeah, pre-COVID. So I got to get that. I got to get that updated so they'll let me into your guys' country.
Well, if you get it updated in time, there is a Scott Fishbowl live draft weekend up here in July that both Jacob and I will be attending. So we could have some fun and show you a good time and that sort of thing. So
yeah, that would be a blast.
Yeah,
that would definitely be a blast.
All right, let's talk. Okay, let's talk the Drake London one first because I got to get it off my chest. We got to talk about it. I threw out kind of like just a tongue-in-cheek tweet last night, and then Hayden jumped on it, got some run, and it funnels us into a better, more macro conversation. So I was laughing at the fact that, Drake London at 15-2 is a tough sell right now. It makes a lot of sense. You get a McVay tree coach in there. You get Kirk Cousins, who is always propped up WR1. We get all this thing. It makes sense in a vacuum. We like the talent, former top 10 pick, blah, blah, blah. We've been waiting for this breakout. Is it too frothy? Where does it lead us to the macro landscape, Gretch?
No, he's undervalued at 15.2.
Wow. Okay.
He should definitely be going. Not definitely, but I believe he's a part of the tier of receivers sort of at the 1-2 turn. And because, I'm not saying he's massively undervalued, but I think he should be going about like the 201 because once you get past him, you get to the running back group that have a really hard time with Saquon. I'm okay with taking some Jonathan Taylor, but also structurally, it puts you in a tough spot to take those running backs. And there's such good running back values throughout the draft. Like there's no point right now where there's not a running back that I want to take. Like, especially with some of these day 3 running backs that landed in great spots. You have like Kamani Vidal, I think it is, or several others. There were a bunch on day 3 that were interesting in the later rounds that make for solid running back additions. The like round 7 to 12 range is just the amount of like projectable volume that we never used. Like in the old days, like running projectable volume was the issue with the early running back picks. But now you don't have to take projectable volume in round 2 and round 3. You can take it in round 8. Like you can literally get a starting running back in round 8 for like in a lot of spots. We could talk about that if we draft in a little bit, but there's so many ways to play that. There's not a lot of ways to play receiver late. So I think structurally that's still right. But as far as London specifically, the bigger like macro discussion around him, and I read a little bit of your Twitter conversation, and there were some replies there that are like, he hasn't done anything to justify this. And I won't deny that, but I will take issue with that particular type of analysis. And it's funny because like 5-ish years ago, I used to write stuff basically yearly. When I was still at CBS, I wrote about it. When I started my newsletter, I was writing about it, railing on how people were overvaluing projections and that projections are pretty flawed. It's really difficult to do a full season NFL projection. There's so much chaos. People like my buddy Mike Leone that I do a projections podcast with over at ETR every summer. He does it, as I think as well as you could possibly do it. But I trust his projections on a weekly basis. And, they're incredibly valuable for DFS and all of these things. you know the variables on a weekly basis, but on a season-long basis, the variables aren't known. They change throughout a year. There's like all these branches of what actually we expect and then what actually happens a month into the season, 2 months into the season, things change. And so anyway, for a long time, I've argued that projections need to be discounted and not overvalued and all of those things. We've moved so far in the direction of player profile analysis. This is just like a macro look at the market and how we pick players that I think in some cases the edge now is in projections. We've overcompensated. So like the thing about Drake London, one of the replies you had was this thing that was like, it's very, very rare to have, I can't remember what the guy said, but I remember him saying it's very, very rare in his comment. And it was something about like a guy like London who's done what London's done to suddenly, probably to go this high or to suddenly live up to this type of ADP or something. And it is very, very rare. But my immediate response back would be, it's very, very rare to have an Arthur Smith offense in the NFL and the things that That's he fair. Did and the quarterback play that he had, the off-target quarterback rates that London has had through 2 seasons and all of those things. And so when we think about like actually like our job is to predict, it's to project forward things. And we have to account for the fact that London isn't an apples to apples. His stats are not an apples to apples comparison to other young players. It is, we talk about range of outcomes looking forward. We don't think about it looking back. The stats that he's accumulated are undoubtedly sub 50th percentile range of outcomes. I don't think you can make any other argument, knowing what we know about Arthur Smith's offense, the pass rate, the weird play calling, the ways that they would like feature ancillary pieces like a Jonnu Smith or whatever. Like, I mean, he's just always doing weird stuff. And so anyway, I mean, you have to look at his first 2 years and understand, okay, like there's potential. There's more meat on the bone. We might not know what Drake London actually is yet. And then when you know those elements, and then you say the things that you just said, they have a Rams, coordinator taking over. And Raheem Morris has coached a lot of places, but he wanted to bring over somebody from the Rams where he last was. He must feel as a defensive coordinator that a lot of the stuff Sean McVay is doing is very valuable. I think they're going to emulate that. Most of the McVay underlings that have been hired elsewhere have emulated McVay stuff, which has been concentration, a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of routes, right? And then you say the Cousins thing. You say pass rate's going to be there. He's going to run a lot of routes. The main targets get the ball in these offenses. If I go project the Falcons, how can I not project Drake London to have a great season? Like, I mean, and yes, I know that the last 2 years he hasn't done anything to justify this ADP, but we're not to a point like one of the biggest things we know about football is last season is just his pass is prologue or whatever they say. It's not going to tell us exactly what happens next year. We want to find the breakout. The player that you mentioned really liking, maybe over London, was Brandon Ayuk. I thought that was really interesting because his first 3 years of his career, he never had a 2+ yards per out run. Then last year he had a 3+ yards per out run. That happens. Right. You have to be able to project the year that the leap comes, right? Drake London, by the way, rookie year yards per out run better than any of Brandon Ayuk's first 3 seasons, right? And he's only played 2 seasons. That jump can come for these players. And for London, it's not just about the per routes run stuff. It's like we know he's going to run more routes. We know there's more volume in the offense. These are the projection type things that I feel very confident about. Atlanta has a very easy schedule. I think Warren Sharp did some stuff with that, or did his typical tweet. I don't know his full process or anything, but they were way above everyone else. So I figure anyone who does some type of strength of schedule thing is going to think favorably about Atlanta. They play in a dome, and you now have Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix. I mean, they've invested a lot at quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think you have to feel pretty confident that 2024 is not going to look like 2022 and 2023 for London.
Yeah, no, for sure. I really like where you went with that. The one that really got my wheels turning there, Gretch, was the Arthur Smith stuff. And it got me thinking back to the Tennessee Titans days of Arthur Smith and how they literally had rookie A.J. Brown for one of those years. And they had Corey Davis in one of those years who was, I think he was probably 3rd or 4th year contract, but nonetheless, a former top 5 pick. People thought the world of him there, right? And it was Tanny both those years. And the leading wide receiver on both those teams, 600 yards in the 1 year in 2019 for Corey Davis. And then in A.J. Brown's rookie season, it was a 1K year there. So just underutilization by today's standard of your outlier talent WR1. So I think it's a really good lens to look at through. Like, this is historically what Arthur Smith has done with WR1. Let's juxtapose that to what could happen now that he's gone. So I think that was a really sharp point, just like, in general there.
Yeah, and if you want to just, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can break it down. You can look at pass rate over expected, all those types of things. If you want to just look at pass volume, I mean, he was second from the bottom of the league in 2022 in Drake London's rookie season. They were 25th last year, bumped up a little bit, but still like very, very low in overall pass volume, pass attempts. And that number that was second from the bottom of the league, the Bears are the only one below them. Both Atlanta and the Bears were like historically low in terms of, you got to adjust for the 17 game thing. But when you look at pass attempts per game, both of them were the first team in, I can't remember how long. I've written about it a number of times, but I want to say it was at least like 20 years. The first team in like 20 years to be under 25 pass attempts per game for a full NFL season. And so we had two teams
back 20, 30, 40 years with that shit.
Right. And so, and that's, I mean, that was London's rookie year. He only gets to run 419 routes. He runs 485 last year. Number one wide receivers run 500 plus routes. You would hope they could get up to around 600 routes. The really good ones do. Like Justin Jefferson has, I think, multiple 600 route seasons. He had one that approached 650 with Kirk Cousins. So 690 is what it was in 2022 with Kirk Cousins, and 623 in 2021.
That's literally 3.5 more games of football in a single season than Drake London had played.
Right. It's a ton.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
I mean, you're talking about the potential for a really large, and that's just like, I mean, that's not talking about Drake London's skill set or anything else. It's just like, he's going to run more routes. He's going to have more opportunity to catch more passes, which is pretty important. But also, like, and when you compare him to like a Brandon Ayuk, this is something that I think is also really interesting. We get into like the projections element. Last year, Brandon Ayuk had the huge breakout. These two guys had really similar targets and receptions. I think London had like 5 more targets. Ayuk had like 6 more receptions. He was a lot more efficient. But Ayuk had like 450 more yards and 5 more TDs. He was massively more efficient on that volume. But the point is that Ayuk, even in a really, really incredible year, sort of has a limit to where he can get volume-wise if he's still at the Niners. Now, if he gets traded. But I have a hard time with him really pushing up into the second round. You go look at his game log last year. There's a lot of 3-4 catch games. Like, that's the way that their offense is.
Yeah, I mean, everybody last year just talked about like the zone versus man coverage game and how they would scheme certain spots to Ayuk, certain spots to Debo, and the man coverage stuff being those were his explosion games. But as you alluded to, man, so many mouths to feed in that offense too. And like, it's hard to bank on like uber overachieving efficiency, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, targets are massive. Like for like, and it's not even necessarily hard to bank on, but it's like, where can you go from here? I mean, you probably need an injury to a Debo or a Kittle or something. He's already maxed out efficiency wise and had a great year last year. But I do think people think he was better than he actually was last year a little bit because he was so good on a per route basis and those types of things. You look at like half PPR though, he averaged like 13.4 points per game. And that's, I'm trying to pull it up now. That's like wide receiver 14-ish. And now he's going on the second round. And that's on a really efficient season where I'm like, unless he gets traded, I don't know how he's better than that. Maybe it's more touchdowns, but there's going to be other players and like the issue isn't that Brandon Ayuk can't be good because he's incredible. It's that when George Kittle goes for a 60-yard catch and run TD, they don't throw the rest of that drive. When Christian McCaffrey is the focal point in plus game script, or Debo even, who gets more touches around the line of scrimmage, is the focal point in plus game script. Those guys have more like guaranteed volume in all scripts, whereas Ayuk is this vertical pass weapon. When they start to get ahead, gets phased out a little bit. It's just hard for me to envision so the point I'm comparing London and his volume last year, we're talking about London potentially adding 200 routes. I mean, maybe not fully 200, but 150. When I think about the legit top 10 wide receiver seasons, you need 150 plus targets. Ayuk had like 105 last year. He only played 16 games, but 105, extremely efficient 105 targets. But I mean, it's really hard when, again, we get to these projections elements. I'm not saying like we should hyper weight projections, but you do have to be like a little bit aware of what's plausible in a statistical like sense of what's what's a possibility for Ayuk's season? 120 targets, maybe. Like London's 150. Like is maybe not just possible. It might be my base projection for him when I get down to the nuts and bolts of how Atlanta is going to play and what I expect. So it's a gap there to me in terms of what you can then do. And if he can be more efficient, and what if Ayuk's efficiency comes back? I don't want to be buying the guy who was already that much more efficient, because efficiency is a side that, I mean, I don't want to regress that much. I think efficiency gets over regressed, and we worry about that too much as well, because Brandon Ayuk's good. I mean, that's the key point as well. You want superstars. You want outliers. I remember writing that in one piece. We're searching for outliers. And so Ayuk being an outlier last year, efficiency-wise, is not a reason not to draft him. But when the meat on the bone is different, right? I mean, that's something we have to consider in terms of what is possible in the range of, the range of outcomes and all of that stuff. So it's pretty. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that you also quantify what those targets are worth now coming from Cousins in maybe a potential more up-tempo one, opposed to coming from Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke last year, right? So, I mean, London was good on a per-target basis. He was hyper-efficient on a per-target basis, and now we factor in that those targets will be worth more, right? So, yeah, I think it's a really good conversation. The other kind of like macro direction affiliated with it would not be about London in particular. It'd be about the landscape of drafting now, how we're not pushing up running backs to that second round. We're not pushing up elite tight end to that second round. We're not pushing up elite quarterback to that second round. And maybe that stuff is coming. I mean, that was a point that Biden Form made in response to it. And I was like, that's pretty astute, because now all of a sudden we've pushed these quarterbacks and tight ends and running backs back so far that we want to pick apart these wide receivers to death in the second round. Have we gotten too far out ahead of our skis in chasing wide receiver breakout second round stuff? And maybe we should be flipping back into some of the more known commodity, like the elite quarterback stuff? Or is that just naturally going to happen over the course of the summer with recreational players joining the drafting pool?
So I saw those notes and I thought they were super interesting. I wrote a piece on April 12th over at my newsletter when I started my slows after I did my trip that we were talking about. I wrote a couple different pieces about the biggest things that stood out to me, but one of them was round 2 is a bit of a wasteland. And then the subtitle was, and that makes it, or which makes it a key to drafts right now. I mean, I think round 2 it was interesting to see you guys discussing that. I was glad to see other people kind of coming to that same conclusion. I think it's a really interesting one to think through, and I don't think there's like an immediate answer to it, because there are so many structural things that play into why the values are what they are. But I agree with you guys that, and Hayden's quote tweet of your thing was like, what's going on with round 2 wide receivers? That was my immediate thought too, especially after London. See, I think there's kind of a tier break after London. The other guy that I then push up there in a similar way to London is Chris Olave, where it's like, he's the clear star one, and he's gotten a ton of volume both years. And drafters seem to think that because he hasn't been efficient yet, that he can't be efficient, that he wasn't with Derek Carr last year, that this is not going to mesh. And it's like, I mean, he was playing with a new quarterback last year. Is it that weird that they could be inefficient in their first year together and then figure some things out in year 2? Like, how certain are you that Chris Olave can't be efficient? Because the volume he's earned over the first 2 years, when you break up stuff like yards per out run into the targets per out run and the yards per target, and you start to really dig into, okay, targets earned and all of those things and the depth of target, and you start to wait for air yards, it's very strong. Chris Olave looks like a very good route runner who can get open, who can earn a lot of volume, and again, plays in a dome like we were talking about with the Falcons. It's a very comparable situation to London for me, in that I feel pretty confident these guys are the number ones in their passing game and are going to soak up volume. And you, I think, have to tell yourself a story that they can't be efficient to justify not chasing what the target ceiling can be and the volume ceiling, the air yard ceiling can be for these guys. That's the type of stuff that still matters. I mean, that goes back to like early 2000s fantasy analysis. Who can I project for 150 targets? And that's where I'm saying, like, it is a little bit of like an overcompensation. But when we're talking about Ayuk and Debo in that range, and we're talking about some of the other teammate stuff, like the Nico Collins and Diggs And I don't know exactly where their ADPs have settled now, but I know when I was originally writing this piece about the round 2 wide receivers, you have all these teammates in the back of the second round, especially after that Diggs trade. You also had DJ Moore there, who I assume has fallen a little bit. I haven't dug into that ADP a ton yet, but they had already.
I could tell you offhand that 23-ish for Nico Collins, 25 for Stephon Diggs, and 25/26 for DJ Moore. Those three
so that's
in
still
a row.
Yeah, that's still pretty lofty. When I wrote this piece, I just pulled it up. They were about 22 to 24. All three of them were in the 22 to 24 range. So they've all slid a little bit, but that's still very lofty for guys that have really high profile teammates. For DJ Moore, he had already acquired Keenan Allen, or the Bears had already acquired Keenan Allen when I wrote this, and now obviously they've also added Rome Odunze. That's insane. His price is the most insane of anybody in drafts right now. But when you start to talk
about rooms a good amount right now, like he fell to the 7th in one of my drafts yesterday.
Oh wow, the 7th round.
Yeah, like I want to say, maybe it was the 6th, 68th overall, if memory serves. That was the furthest I've seen him fall.
And his ADP still sitting at like 25?
No, it's like 50 something now.
Oh, it was at 25. I understand.
It was at 25.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying it was still in that range. I was like, whoa.
No.
No. That's good. That makes more sense. But still, I mean, I'm talking about this more from the pre-draft perspective, which is maybe certainly outdated at this point, but part of the issue with the round 2 receivers is who comes up, because you have a lot of these good players next that also have teammate concerns, was sort of the point I was making. I think Davante Adams is getting kind of a bad rap. He still had another guy who just earned ridiculous volume last year, and people are so into the player so his yards per out run was 1.97 last year. It's his lowest yards per out run since 2017. The previous 3-4 straight seasons are 2.3 plus. So it's a significant drop off. But his targets per out run are still 29.4%. He still did that at a pretty solid ADOT. His weighted targets per out run, really, really strong, right in the same range as he's always been. The only difference is his yards per target completely cratered into a range that is multiple yards lower than basically anything he'd done over multiple years. Now, that could be the sign of an older receiver no longer having the juice. It could also be that he played with Aiden O'Connell and a crappy enough Jimmy Garoppolo that Garoppolo got benched for Aiden O'Connell, and their coach got fired because their scheme was so awful. He's an offensive guru, and they couldn't do anything offensively. So they fire their coach, but then they get taken over by a defensive-minded coach, and they're kind of doing some, interesting things in the ways that they're trying to win games late in the season. My inclination on Davante Adams is okay, well, now they get Gardner Minshew. I don't think Gardner Minshew is good, but I think he's a competent enough level of quarterback that there's a floor and a barometer there where is Davante Adams going to have a 6.7 yards per target again? I mean, I would rather bet against that than bet on him repeating that level of inefficiency, especially when he earned volume again at a 30% targets per out run level. The reason his yards per out run fell so much and people are so worried about this age cliff with him, when you start to split up the volume earning and the efficiency, it's all efficiency. And that's one of the ways that you could have gotten yourself onto a Mike Evans or a Keenan Allen last year, was that they were still earning some volume and that people were way too convinced they had to be inefficient because they're older. And so anyway, Davante Adams is one of the names that I think you could throw in there. And then Chris Olave, who still was going in the 3rd round when I wrote this, but people are not just projecting volume and projecting number one wide receivers. They want to think solely in terms of talent and youth and that type of upside. I don't have a major issue with that type of drafting. I advocated it for years and years and years, but I think we've jumped the shark. I mean, at this point, if you're not interested in players that can project for massive target volume because you're confident that they can't be efficient, you're overstating the wrong elements, I think. And I don't know. Yeah, I think that's part of the concern in round 2, but the whole round 2 thing is it's also an issue of there's not a whole lot of elite wide receivers. They fall off right away. Should those other positions go higher? I think the tight end should. I don't think the running back should, but I think the tight end should be going as soon as round 2. I mean, I think there's several good ones, and that's why they fall. But the top 8 or so are some dynamic tight end profiles that where they're going, I'm packing my bags. I'm getting as much of them as I possibly can. That was one of the other big pieces I wrote over at Stone Signals with my first takeaways in the pre-draft was you got to get the elite tight ends. That group of tight end in the 4th and 5th round is just massively valuable. But then behind that, if you're taking tight ends there, you run out of receivers by round 6, round 7. So then that gets back to, I want to be really discerning about taking early running back picks. I really think the optimal is maybe 4 straight receivers and then go tight end, tight end. And then through 6, you have 2 elite tight ends and 4 elite receivers. And now you can hit that range of round 7 to round 12 running back and QB pocket. And then, I mean, you could build some really good running back rooms in that round 7 to round 12 range. Then you have to hit receiver. You're thin. I usually would have more depth at receiver than 4 through like 12. But you could do it that way if you start with 4 elites. And then you're hitting receiver late again. And so, I mean, that's...
You can grab some like decent volume at the running back position in guys like Zamir White, Zach Moss, like whether you like them or not, but like in that 7 to 11 pocket, as you're alluding
there's
to.
There's a ton.
Like,
I love Javonte Williams is another one, was very inefficient last year, coming off a multi-ligament knee tear, and people are just really confident he's going to be inefficient again, even though he caught a bunch of balls. The Broncos clearly used him as a lead back. Sean Payton showed that he liked Javonte Williams. It didn't really add anything significant there. And then they drafted Bo Nix. They're going to continue the short passing game. That's what Bo Nix was good at. They're going to throw their running backs a million times. You know, I've written about the high value touches for a long time. They're going to lead the league in high value touches. I feel great about Javonte Williams' price. You got to be certain he's going to be massively inefficient again. If he rebounds at all his second year back from the knee reconstruction, I mean, he's a smash where he's going.
I thought he was a smash last year, so I mean, I should be on him again. Because like,
he had a 3.2 yards per carry. I mean, he was really inefficient. That was the issue.
I did so many of those builds that were like 4 or 5 wide receiver, an elite tight end, and then you build out like a hybrid 0 RB with anchor Javonte in the 6th round kind of deal, like something like that. He would be like my 6th pick, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we get an opportunity to run that back this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we do. Gretch, I want to ask you about some of the risers and fallers underdog. Actually, 2 things I want to hit on real quick. Let's take a moment for me to bring this up here. 2 things I want to hit on real quick. Shout out to Underdog for getting ahead of this and doing something they've never done in the past by announcing when stuff will be dropped so that people can, plan their volume, plan their bankrolls and stuff like this. Back in the day, it was just kind of like a contest would fill and then they'd spring another one on you. Now they're planning it out for you. I think it's a brilliant concept. So just in case people hadn't seen yet, May 8th and May 15th are 2 big days to circle your calendar in terms of, certain contests coming out here.
And they're all coming. They're all coming pretty quick. And like you said, a lot of different price points. I think it's possible that we're going to have a lot more in the lobby at one time and people can kind of pick and choose what they want to play, as opposed to like often there's like one low price point and one high price point. Like for me, having to travel out of state, I would miss like some of the puppies. They would close in like a few days, right? And it's like, oh, well, I never got into that one. I just got to play whatever's available when I can make the trip. But I think there's going to be more options in the lobby for a little bit of a longer time now that they announced it this way, at least in the early months, which is cool. It gives people more, more optionality. And I mean, they make smart decisions with everything they do, but I love that element of it this year. They're releasing 9 contests in the first few months here by May 15th, which is cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Going to be lots of different strategies to talk through, like, time box versus BBM, that it spans the whole thing. And then, of course, weekly winners. So it's great. Great variety, both price point and stylistic. If you guys go to the Underdog Fantasy, they tweeted this out this morning. Nice, clean way of looking at it here. We got the biggest risers and fallers since pre-draft till now. So kind of like opening day ADP. Not an overly surprising list here, Gretch, but I'd ask you kind of like, I'm blaming you guys. I'm blaming Stealing Bananas and Sean Siegel and you for the Ben Sinnott one. This is getting crazy here. 49 spots. He's the 3rd highest riser. But I don't know. We got Zeke. We got Vidal, as previously mentioned. We got Ben Sinnott. We got Luke McCaffrey, Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey, Rico Dowdle, Ray Davis, and Xavier Worthy. A lot of winners from the draft in quotations. Some veterans that, their jobs look safer all of a sudden. which of these ones would you want to hit on and or give some input on, Gretch?
I think most of the rookies are really intriguing. The Sonat one is interesting. I think it's tricky. Again, getting to the projection thing, you start talking about Jaden Daniels is probably going to play quarterback for them the whole year. Part of the reason he's risen so much is he didn't have an ADP before. I don't think anyone was drafting Ben Sonat, but he probably deserves to be drafted in the late rounds. But both him and I really liked Luke McCaffrey pre-draft. I was bummed about the landing spot, even though the draft capital was super exciting. He got into the back end of day 2. But both of like the slot receiver and the tight end element is tricky in that I think those guys get a lot of their targets sort of with a mobile quarterback, the quarterback's going to scramble on a lot of those plays where I like the drop back passer, like you think of Tom Brady throwing to Wes Welker and Julian Edelman for all those years. It's the immobile quarterback that is using the shorter passing game more. The mobile guys are often just vertical or run. And so it's a little tricky for me with the tight end and the slot receiver going there. I get the rise because they both had basically no ADP. I had a ton of McCaffrey in my early drafts. But I'm stoked that I'm going to get ADP value, but I'm not like chasing him up. So those two are ones that I'm not really chasing. Vidal for sure. I really like the landing spot. I think you have to be really worried about Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins come back from an Achilles tear last year. Gus Edwards very old, not very efficient last year. No longer has a Lamar Jackson threat to help. Like I think that's a big part of what's helped Gus Edwards' rushing efficiency over the years. We know mobile quarterbacks impact running back rushing efficiency, and especially for a downhill runner where they do the read options. If Jackson pulls, they have to protect the edges. They have to be very careful that he can pull the ball and go outside, and it opens up lanes up the middle. He's not going to have that anymore. They still have Greg Roman's run scheme, but Gus Edwards is, I think, going to look old this year as a result of that. He already is pretty old. And so I think we
just go, this is Greg Roman just bringing in his boys that he's comfortable with.
Right.
He's just like, I'm just bringing back my boys.
Yeah, and he's going to give him volume. But if Edwards and if J.K. Dobbins can't come back from that Achilles, if they don't look good, maybe they just continue to get volume. But they're going to base their offense on running the ball. Vidal's going to have an opportunity to look like the juicy guy, the guy who has the juice in the backfield and potentially take it over. I know he's a day 3 guy. That's a big statement, but we've seen day 3 or undrafted guys get big volume early in their career. He really has that opportunity. I think you want to be hammering him even as he's rising. Some of those other ones towards the bottom, McConkey, Keon Coleman, great landing spots. Ray Davis, Xavier Worthy, also great landing spots. They have to be rising. And I want to get some of all those guys. I don't like the Coleman profile as much, for example, but I still think you have to be bumping him up. Who's going to get the volume in Buffalo? They lost a lot of targets. There's a lot of available opportunity there.
Any potential concern that his skill set, like his best skill set, kind of overlaps a little bit with Dalton Kincaid, like as a vertical slot kind of top type, big body guy? Because he's not really a traditional X, is he?
I guess I would say no, not any huge concern for me. Okay. I don't tend to think about the usage in those terms. I tend to think about it more in just like ADOT terms, because I think there's like just in depth of target terms, because I think there's a lot of ways that players can get aligned on the field, and we worry too much about like slot and some of that stuff, because ultimately if you're trying to get guys into different spaces on the field in a passing concept, you can use different formations or different alignments to do that, right? And so I guess I hadn't really heard that a ton, that Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid might have a lot of overlap, but I would think that they can be more creative. I think I might have been the first
to say it. I think I might have just made it up.
They might be able to be like, my thought typically when I hear stuff like the slot and stretching the seam and all that is like, there's enough opportunities to stretch the seam. There's different creative ways you can align. And really it comes down to like, is this player going to get some vertical targets? Are they able to do stuff underneath? Like that type of skill set you just mentioned, there's enough, I think, opportunity in a full game's worth of passing concepts for two guys to exist in that area. Basically saying they do everything. Like they do a lot of stuff in the intermediate range, and then they also get vertical in the seam some. And like that's a pretty well-rounded depth profile. Some plays, one guy runs the dig route, and the other guy runs the vertical route. Some plays it goes the other way. That's not a major issue when you think about like scheming up the routes and those types of things. So anyway, I think
Okay.
you have to feel like Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid are going to be both heavily targeted. And I don't really love the Coleman profile, but they had a bunch of day 3 picks. I thought they were going to take more receivers. Like, that's where I was hoping like a Luke McCaffrey might land, right? Like, be the new Cole Beasley. Josh Allen still scrambles a lot, but he's getting a little older, and maybe he'll stand back in the pocket and throw to a slot receiver a little bit more. But yeah, that they just took the one receiver. And so they seem to be very content with the guys they already have on their roster. That was one of the sneaky like winners of the talk about like veteran winners is like, yeah, we knew the Bills were going to draft some receivers, but they traded back twice. Then they drafted one in the second round, and then they didn't draft another one. And they had all those extra, they had like 4 fifth-round picks. I thought they were definitely going to take a day 3 receiver on top of that. They did not. They traded out of some of those picks.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of smart money was circling that pick 33 for AD Mitchell. Be like, hey, look at this. They got a guy that potentially could have gone in the first round, falls right into their lap, and then they got out of there. And it was kind of like, all right, I guess so. I got to ask you about the Xavier Worthy one, and then we can move to the Fallers and move into a draft here. The Xavier Worthy one been a really hot button topic just in general right now. Do you think it is too far to push him ahead of Marquise Brown and ahead of Rashee Rice?
So a little teaser. Sean and I had this conversation on Stealing Bananas. I won't say who took which side. I think he should go ahead of Marquise Brown, but it was a Rice and Worthy discussion. I guess I will say which side, because I think Rashee Rice is the best value now in all drafts. I'm concerned about the off-field stuff, but if you're following it, there seems to be pretty strong indication that we're looking at like 1 to 2 games. I have not seen really anything else that suggests that. When the indictment came out, his ADP flew down. I was doing my slows at that time, and he was falling way past ADP in every draft, despite the fact that his actual indictment, like, we knew he was going to get charged. We knew he was involved. This wasn't new information. His actual indictment did not include anything about the gun stuff that was like rumored, and didn't include anything about like driving under the influence, which was also rumored. Like maybe there was some alcohol related. It was all about like reckless driving and that stuff. There was one charge that was like a felony and carries like a mandatory 1 to 2 year sentence. And so there's people that are like, well, maybe he's going to like actually wind up in jail. That's a possibility. I mean, I understand that. At the same time, like, I thought he was underpriced at the 2-3 turn. He's another guy I would have thought could move up into like the Drake London-ish range. His per route stuff in year 1 was incredible. He didn't get a full route share until week 14, even though all season was performing incredibly well per route. They finally start to give him the full workload late in the year and then in the playoffs, and he was very good at that point. There was some talk throughout the year that like maybe his skill set wasn't ready to do the full route stuff. Once he got that opportunity, he still was very strong. Great first playoff game. Not as much the rest of the playoffs, but Travis Kelce was going off as well. He was strong, though, and his role and Xavier Worthy's, I don't think they really overlap. I think they shouldn't be. Like, I think Xavier Worthy was a bigger hit to Marquise Brown, because you're talking about the speed receiver role, the vertical threat, maybe some manufactured touches, the way they use the motion stuff. They've done it with Mecole Hardman. They've done it with Kadarius Toney. They've tried with a lot of different guys. So you're talking about a distribution of touches that is around the line of scrimmage and vertical, whereas Rashee Rice's distribution was not a lot of manufactured touches around the line of scrimmage, and also not a ton of vertical stuff. He had a really low ADOT last year. It was a lot of just short intermediate, curls, finding soft spots in the zone. And because every team plays these cover 2 shells against them, Mahomes, there's all this talk that he's become a check down artist. Well, not really. They're still at a very high pass rate. They're testing the secondaries every play, and then he's patient. It's hard for a quarterback to consistently be patient and take the underneath throw. I thought Mahomes played great quarterback. I think that low ADOT stuff is massively overblown, but it's because of how defenses are playing with the cover 2 shell and all that. They don't want to get beat over the top. A Xavier Worthy pick, in addition to Marquise Brown, puts more stress on these safeties. It opens up the underneath of their passing game that much more. It's great for Travis Kelce, and it's great for Rashee Rice, who, if Travis Kelce's now a 4th round pick because he's so old and they talked about limiting his routes and all that stuff, Rashee Rice is the guy who takes that role now. The short to intermediate, high volume, lots of completions. That's different than what Xavier Worthy was drafted for. Although, to be fair, Xavier Worthy, for a speed guy, does run the short and intermediate routes very well. That's something that is unique about him. He's not just a burner. So maybe he can do a lot of that stuff as well. Maybe he can just immediately be better than Rashee Rice. But I have some concerns, minor concerns, about how slow they brought on Rashee Rice last year and how slow they brought on Sky Moore, which proved to be valid, but how slow they kind of bring along everyone in Kansas City that they might, even if Xavier Worthy's immediately a hit, bring him along slowly and kind of let Marquise Brown be ahead of him for a period, even though he doesn't really deserve to be. And so we are hoping, I think for Xavier Worthy, I think you're hoping for a full role in the second half of the season. I think he's a smash still. I think you want to take him still. I think they're both great values. Again, if the market is down on Travis Kelce, they should be higher on the receivers for this team. But
that's a good show.
Rice's skill set wise and the role is like, I just want to emphasize that. It's like, that's unique. And that's the first guy that's done that so well in that Travis Kelce mold where like, that's the heir apparent to a lot of underneath volume.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well articulated. Yeah, I'm totally in lockstep with that. The one thing that comes to mind is like we can do some really fun stuff with the Chiefs right now in drafts that I don't think is going to be available there in a couple months. Just in terms of like the Mahomes round 4, sometimes round 5 price tag, and you can literally get like front end of or back end of draft board rather. You could pair the aforementioned Drake London and you could pair him with Garrett Wilson, and then we can do like Kelce, Mahomes in the 3-4. And you can do that almost not every time now, but it's readily available. So just like little like glimpse into a window of like something I don't think will be available in a couple months.
Agree. I think that's a great call.
I'll ask you, we should jump in a draft. The chat's clowning me because we always say
it's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm hyped up to be here and chat with you, man.
I love it, man.
There's so much to talk about right now. I mean, I think it's a fun. We could do this for 3 hours.
It's a great time. It's a great time. I don't think there's anyone who like stands out on this list in a big way. I had a Galaxy brain take. These are the fallers. I mean, Michael Mayer makes sense because they bring in Brock Bowers. Like, you know, the Braylon Allen one, like, yeah, not a great landing spot to go to the Jets, just in terms of like, we all love Breece Hall kind of deal. And then, you know, the Chuba, Miles Sanders, trickle-down effects of the Jonathan Brooks. Anyways, we could go through this. This all makes sense. I got 2 Galaxy brain ones here that I don't think should be falling as much as they currently are. Miles Sanders and Zay Jones. And the reason I say that is because one has already been cut, and the other one is a potential cut candidate now that they brought in Jonathan Brooks. I think those two could find meaningful landing spots. I look at the Cowboys potentially for Zay Jones. I look at the Cowboys potentially for Miles Sanders as well. This is a super third eye gal brain, but is there any way we can get on board with this take, Gretch?
No, I don't hate that. I actually missed Zay Jones already got cut since the draft.
Yeah,
I missed that.
As soon as Brian Thomas came in there, it was like a day and a half later.
I just Googled it. Thank you, Zay Jones, from the Jaguars official account. I mean, that's brutal. That was yesterday. They sent that out. I missed that. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a fun take on Zay Jones, where I do think there are places that he could land that could be very valuable. I mean, what if you got drafted, signed by the Chargers, where we were talking about the Chargers let Keenan Allen and Mike Williams go, needed to add receivers. They, instead of going receiver in the top 10, they go offensive line. They do get McConkey. It's another team that I thought was going to take another receiver in day 3 and like in round 4 or something. They wait till round 7. They take Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, as their second receiver. But McConkey joins, Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston. That's your 3 receivers this year. If Zay Jones goes in there's a lot of ways Zay Jones can wind up playing a lot and being a key piece of the puzzle for Justin Herbert. There's definitely still teams that can use an extra receiver, a veteran that, I'm not saying Zay Jones is incredible, but can at least run routes and be viable and so I think the fact that he's a free agent now was definitely a boost to his value relative to being stuck in Jacksonville. The Sanders one, I don't think he's going anywhere. Have you seen his contract? It's not.
Yeah.
I think that my thing on
next year, not this year. Yeah,
exactly. And so that's where I was going to go with it. My thing on the Jonathan Brooks pick is he's coming back from an ACL. I think they draft him thinking he's the best running back in this class. We love him. And we already know we want to move on from Miles Sanders next year, but we're not winning the division this year. We're not a really good team. And we paid Miles Sanders a ton of money. They're on the hook for a lot of money. If they tried to cut him, even if they did a post June 1 cut, their cap savings would be literally $200,000 and they would eat $7.5 million in dead cap. They're not going to eat
There's
seven
no
and a half.
point to cut then.
Yeah. You would save $200,000. That's ridiculous. So they're going to keep him. They're going to use him in the early part of the season when Jonathan Brooks is still coming back from that ACL, who's, I think, their running back of the future now. They're going to also still use Chuba Hubbard. I think in the second half of the season, you see Miles Sanders get phased out and you see Jonathan Brooks take over. It feels very clear when you have this veteran that you signed to a 2-year deal and year one went horrible, so horrible that you benched him for Chuba Hubbard. And then you know already at this point, you're cutting him after this year, that the Jonathan Brooks pick is like, okay, well, we'll still use Miles Sanders in the early part of the year. And so actually I took some Miles Sanders in the pre-draft period because I didn't think they would draft a back. And I was like, well, I mean, he's owed so much money that he's going to be one of the 1-2 guys here with Chuba. They end up taking Jonathan Brooks. And now I'm like, I can't draft Miles Sanders because I think he gets volume early in the year, but he's in like a split. And then, like I said, he gets phased out in the money weeks and you have Jonathan Brooks taking over and then they cut him. Right. And it's just, It's not like, I don't think the Panthers have the possibility of being surprisingly really good this year in a way that could maybe make them like really push in. Well, I mean, even if that was the case, they probably push in with Jonathan Brooks because there's just this clearly better talent that's coming up behind him. And once he's healthy, they're going to get some work for him down the stretch. And so I think Sanders is on the roster and then also not used when it matters. And he's a tougher one for me.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah, I like the context you added with the contractual money there because now it makes a lot of sense not to cut him. Some other good landing spots in the chat there. Noah saying that Boyd to the Cowboys, that feels like a good fit. He throws out Bills and Steelers for Zay Jones. The other one I would
Zay Jones back to the Bills who drafted him. That would be a fun one.
Yeah. The Lions feel like a good one too. They need that Josh Reynolds replacement kind of thing. I don't know. We want to wish cast it on Jameson Williams, but I'm not sure that's his role. All right, Gretch, I'm going to jump in BBM right now. We are going to get our feet wet here. I believe this is my 5th bullet, something like that. We got 9 spots. Those are going to fill rapid quick. Get in here and soak up this EV, my friends.
Yeah, sorry to the chat who's sitting here. Well, first of all, they wanted us to get into a chat or into a draft earlier. And then second of all, half the chat thinks I am buying 4 and is not aware of. You got half the chat saying once again they're getting confused with Eric. Somebody said Eric can't even remember his own takes because he talked about Zay Jones getting cut recently.
That's funny. Yes,
we've been told that we look similar before. We both wore the backwards hats. We both have these round faces. It's it's something that's been brought up before. That's true.
That's funny. White people all look the same. Lawrence's face. That's so good.
Lawrence is the whitest dude I know.
Yeah, no doubt. Beautiful. All right. Hey, we rolled that back end, so we may or may not have ourselves that Drake London decision that we've been talking through here. 109. Gretch, initial thoughts when you're just looking at like the front end of draft boards here in terms of ADP. Is there anything that jumps out to you that's like obvious that you would be flipping or guys that you'd want to get over in the first couple picks? Or does the craziness start in round 2?
I think Garrett Wilson's undervalued. Again, it's similar to the London case. I mean, I understand people don't want to bet on Rodgers being healthy, but you're looking for outliers. You're looking for the player that can define the season. You're taking one pick out of 12. And this is one of your teams, right? But like, if you tell me at the end of the season, I can look back on the 2024 season and Garrett Wilson was the wide receiver 2 overall or whatever, like that's a really easy story that I can tell. I think the same thesis that I felt last year, we didn't get to see Aaron Rodgers play at all. We don't know what his rehab's like. We don't know any of that. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is like not somebody that I want to be betting on right now, but he's very talented. He's very good at putting the ball where he wants to go. Garrett Wilson does not have any competition for targets whatsoever. I mean, they brought in Mike Williams, who I actually think is a value too, but Mike Williams is not a big target earner. He's just a non-separation generating big body vertical threat. Look at his targets per out run over his career. Always good, but not great. A great ancillary piece, but like that's why Keenan Allen always was the 150 plus target guy. Garrett Wilson can especially with us they did a whole offseason last year with Rodgers, didn't get to play with him. Whole nother offseason with Rodgers. Rodgers is always locked into dudes for his like checks at the line and his back shoulder stuff and his timing routes that he loves to do. I think Garrett Wilson could absolutely explode. I want to be taking him over Puka and AJ Brown, who I love. I love AJ Brown. I think you have to love Puka as well. But I would be taking him right around this Amon-Ra St. Brown's spot.
Well, I think I know what our pick's going to be here.
That comes into play when you have the 109 for sure.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I like all that stuff that you said there. The competition for targets, obviously, very sharp point. The other thing I would add to it just in general is like they did go through, we saw it all in Hard Knocks and they went through. Are we doing it, Gretch? We're pushing up Garrett Wilson over Puka and AJ Brown.
If I was doing one draft, I would take Garrett Wilson here. If you want to take Puka or AJ Brown, I like those players a lot too. They're fine.
It's our draft, Gretch. We're soaking up EV in the players that we love. Let's do it.
We're taking Garrett.
I like it. The other thing is like, everybody saw on Hard Knocks and whatnot that like they did have a full preseason together. They did have all that training camp stuff together. Like that kind of matters in building rapport, building timing, building whatever. Like you saw how good and on time they were. Like, the world saw it just by watching that show. Now, did we miss out on all the game action? Of course, but I do think just like familiarity with one another being important enough that they had that window. It's not like a brand new quarterback coming into the equation.
For sure. Yeah. I think even though they lost the whole regular season, you can't ignore that they spent the whole. I think Garrett Wilson has a great year last year if Rodgers doesn't tear his Achilles. I feel like that's just, we have no idea of knowing that, but that's where I think we're at. Drake London goes 112. We got a BadgeBros draft here. There's one drafter without a badge.
Yeah. All right. We got Saquon. We got Ayuk. We got the buyback into Devontae Adams. We could do the Chris Olave thing. What do you like, Gretch?
I like those guys a little bit more further down, or you could go Kyron or Achane, I think, as well. I wouldn't take Saquon here, but Devontae, Olave, whichever one you really you could take Ayuk too if you like Ayuk. I think the wide receivers structurally are better. All right, let's do Olave. Yeah. I like that. I took a lot of Olave in the pre-draft. You can't really explain to me why he's not going higher, honestly. Okay. I don't understand it. 2 straight years of 2+ yards per out run. That was one of the big stats. I remember Karain pulling the cohort of those guys. I want to say the year we were all in on Debo as like an 8th round pick, because Debo was a guy who got banged up in both of his first years, but he did have 2+ yards per out run in both of his first 2 years. And you look back and it's like the only guys who come into the NFL and have 2+ yards per out run in both of their first 2 seasons, it was just pure superstars. It was the whole list was superstars. Chris Olave fits into this cohort. He's had 25+% targets per out run in both seasons and a pretty strong yards per target. You cannot convince me of a young player who's been this good, of why in this atmosphere, of why he's not an every draft mid-second round pick. It was silly that he was going in the 3rd in the pre-draft period.
No, I like it a lot. You also factor in that they did nothing in the draft in terms of, taking away targets from him, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're ready to go into this year status quo with Rashid Shaheed, him, and A.T. Perry probably, and then Juwan Johnson. Like that looks like, he stands out from that group in a big way.
That's what when Sean and I talked about it when we did our draft marathon stream on Stealing Bananas. Anyone who listens to those, they'll hear this conversation. He put it almost exactly like you did, and I think his specific comment was, is there a bigger gap in the entire NFL between a number 1 receiver and the rest of the receiving corps? Which is, like you just said, he stands out in a big way. I don't think there is. I think Chris Olave is the clearest number 1 in the NFL right now. I was talking about that with London, but you have Pitts, and you also, Mooney and Rondale Moore, and like some of those guys are at least vaguely interesting. Rashid Shaheed's vaguely interesting, and that's where it stops. Juwan Johnson's actually not that interesting when you really dig into it. Taysom Hill might be the biggest threat after that. Like they do some crazy stuff with him. There's nothing there. A.T. Perry could be something. They got Cedric Wilson now. It's gross behind a lot.
No. Yeah, absolutely. The other one I'd throw into the equation might be CeeDee Lamb, the biggest separator from his own team, but at least they have, Jake Ferguson, whatever you think of Jake Ferguson, but he would be in that same category as
Yeah.
biggest.
Brandon Cooks is still
That's true. That's true. I wasn't giving.
He's still I don't know. He was bad last year, Brandon Cooks, but he's still somebody who in the past was multiple time 1,000-yard receiver for multiple different teams. He's a talented player.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's a good call. CeeDee Lamb's definitely in that discussion too.
Yeah. G-Strat, who's in our draft with us, throwing out Michael Pittman. I low-key like Josh Downs a little bit. I low-key like I don't think the AD Mitchell landing spot, I think he should definitely fall in drafts, and he's falling accordingly. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. If Anthony Richardson is who we think Anthony Richardson is, and drafting him at QB4 or QB5, I don't hate the AD Mitchell spot. I think his ADP will stay up because people will push that stack up, kind of like Alec Pierce last year, where his ADP was kind of fake because people would push him up to stack him, kind of thing. But I don't know. The AD one, I think AD is closer to Pittman than people give credit. I think he's talented. Yeah, but
he's definitely talented. DJ Moore just went late second in this. You're saying his ADP's fallen to the fifth.
He's about in that. No, not DJ Moore. ADP has still been in here, and
this
whatever.
This has been a point of confusion for me. So who was the one that has the fifth round ADP that fell to the sixth?
Fifth round ADP.
Rome. Got it.
So I might have misspoke on that one because Rome's ADP is now down here because he was formerly a back end third round, fourth round pick kind of thing. We're up again here. I really like this pocket of wide receiver. These three I think are underpriced. But you can.
I would make a case for Kupp ahead of the.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we could do a Mahomes thing. I like these three receivers too. You could sell me on the other two. You could sell me on Devonta more than DK. But I think it's nice to get some Cooper Kupp. I mean, it's not really a knock on DK. It's just I'm still JSN pilled a little bit, and I think there's a possibility. I don't know. DK's been. I don't think DK has as big of a gap on the other receivers in his passing game when we start talking about it that way, right? I think there's some other dudes there. But Kupp, Devonta, was that?
Well, while we're on it, I mean, Ryan Grubb's offense better than almost anybody would, and just the fact that the way in which he used Rome and the downfield stuff, doesn't that get you excited about DK Metcalf in that X role?
I got asked about JSN vis-a-vis Jalen McMillan's role in the Grubb offense. Ooh. And I mean, I think this is one where I don't know that I would put a lot of stock into the roles in the offense, I guess, because I think one of the big things about the UW offense was that it was really multiple. There was a lot of different formations, a lot of motion, a lot of different stuff. We're back up. Let's talk about this more after our pick here, but
we got the Derrick Henry fall, which is slowly becoming the norm here. We got Travis Kelce staring us in the face. Tank Dell, Keenan Allen. Who do you like?
I'd be comfortable with Kelce or waiting at tight end until next time around. Or I would probably go Dell or Allen, honestly. And just remember I was saying the 4 receiver thing is sort of what I think is optimal. Let's try that. Yeah, let's give it a go. Let's go 0 RB. We can hit tight end in the 5-6 pocket, and then we can hit some running backs and QBs over the next range. I think we're going to like the build by taking a 4th receiver there. But yeah, no, the UW offense I would just describe as being very multiple, a lot of motion, a lot of misdirection. And also the element where Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb coached together at Fresno State before they came to UW. And so it's hard to maybe separate the coordinator from the head coach, who's also a very offensive oriented guy. I think you expect it to be like the UW offense. And I think you're happy about that because it was a very modern offense. It, like I said, used motion, used misdirection, very vertical in the passing game. One of the things about Penix as a prospect, people that did the charting were he was pretty inaccurate. And it didn't show up in his numbers because when he would miss a throw, a lot of times the other guys miss a big opportunity, open receiver downfield. It's that's the only chance you get. And it's you missed a big spot. UW would just have another guy running downfield open the very next play, and they'd be chucking it again, and then he would hit that guy, and you'd be like, all right, well, I was really pissed that he missed that throw last play, but now we have a 50-yard touchdown on the next play. They just constantly aggressive. And so, yeah, that part of it, in terms of where they attack, this is similar to the conversation I was having earlier about role versus just like ADOT and all that. They will attack vertically. DK Metcalf will get his air yards and his vertical, targets and all that stuff. I think you're kind of selling me on him, honestly, in that sense, but I don't know that I would necessarily put him specifically into like a Roma Dunze role or whatever. I think the offense as it is designed to be unique to the skill sets of the players in the offense, which is, for me, is one of the big reasons I'm excited about JSN. I think they will actually use JSN a lot better than the Seahawks did last year, Shane Waldron did last year. And then if he's a star, which I think he still could be, honestly, it's just, it becomes a target volume thing again. And so Tyler Lockett's still there. He's a lot cheaper. I just prefer to play the Seattle passing game through JSN and Lockett than pay third round price.
There's two other things that I would add to that is Noah Fant getting $10 million to play football this year, and then has lost Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, there's a little something there for another pass catcher. And then the one I would add to JSN that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about yet is he might have come back a little quick from that wrist injury.
Yeah.
Like the wrist like timeline was like 4 weeks or something like that. And then kind of eased in after that. That matters for a rookie in the front end of, your first training camp ever kind of deal, missing that valuable time and then being eased in mid-season. So those are the two I'd just add to the Seattle stuff.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. Noah Fant, one of my highest drafted tight ends in the pre-draft area. Because I think I love what you said there. Will Dissly and Parkinson both signed in other places, and you get a new offense, you get a new coordinator. Noah Fant's never gotten an opportunity to be in an offense that actually uses one tight end and runs, like we talked about, route volume. I think his career high is sub 400 still. Like, he's never gotten anywhere close to 500 routes. No, okay, so he had 442 routes way back in 2021, but he's never hit 450. He's never gotten anywhere close to 500. These last 2 years in Seattle, he's been 350 or lower routes. I think you probably see his routes bump up, which is at least something. He hopefully is talented enough to build off that. But I agree with that take. I like that as a late round tight end option.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, there's a couple more I wanted to ask you to get an interesting take on from the second round while we were on it. There's some disparity between. I'm trying to set up a show with Crane and Herzig next week to juxtapose the ETR and the leg up rankings and kind of, be a moderator to them kind of like debating some of their takes and whatnot. And the one that really stood out in the second round that we hadn't talked about yet and is routinely falling to the third round is Micah Evans to me. And ETR has him at like 17. Can I just ask you, Mike Evans, and to close the book on our second round discussion?
I'm definitely at least intrigued by him. He had a really good year last year. The advanced metrics are all incredible. His yards per out run, I believe, was close to a career high. Yeah, it was just slightly worse than his career high way back in 2018. So it was his best season in like 6 years. We know the guy takes care of himself. He shows up every year looking to get 1,000 yards. Like, I mean, that's one of those things where, like, yeah, he's an older receiver, but when he's been this consistent, it is so hard to be consistent in the NFL. Like, that's one of the big takeaways for like the London thing where I'm saying you're trying to predict the next breakout is you don't have guys that are consistent anyway. Like stats change. Guys, as soon as you think you can buy into something that exists in the stats, it's usually going to be gone the next year. I mean, that's like, right. People don't understand that peaks in the NFL are like 3 years max, and that's it. Like, that's all you get. We are up.
Fun decision here. So Mahomes comes all the way back to us. If we want to set something like that up and then take Worthy or Brown after the fact, the elite tight end tier of Pitts and Kittle are available to us. Pacheco, potential draft winner. Who do you like?
Wouldn't go Pacheco. I like the other two options you said. It would be fun to go Mahomes, Worthy, and bypass tight end. I always take the elite tight ends, so let's try that. We were talking about how that's a really fun thing to attack. We might not get Worthy back to us. Actually, I would guess we probably don't with all these badges, but even if we can just get Marquise Brown coming back and get that stacked up, that would be pretty fun. It makes you wish you could go back and take Travis Kelce over Tank Dell now that Mahomes fell all the way back. That would have been the way to play it.
It's kind of rare that he does, but when he does, it does set up the prototypical GM here where it's like a really nice, 5-round start if you get that little mini Mahomes stack in the 4-5 from the right-hand side of the board.
So Kincaid would have been the pick for me. He came all the way back. He went 2 picks before we were on the clock. Got super close. That would have been a really nice value there. Jordan Love
pushing up. Hayden was they did their quarterback tiers yesterday, and he was spitting some fire on liking Jordan Love and having him at QB 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Damn. He actually goes QB 7 there.
Strat, you son of a bitch.
It was good. He took Pacheco on the way back, and it was a wide receiver pick there. I knew that was coming.
We could do the Marquise Brown because
he probably needs to slide like a lot more than this. Okay. But we could do it for the stack, or we could do Kittle. Yeah, it would be one or the other. Do you care about naked Mahomes? Yeah, let's go Kittle.
Naked Mahomes is kind of gross to me. Like just in general, like pre-schedule. I don't know. Maybe this is a take that we need from you. I'm thinking pre-schedule. I'm kind of aping into some onslaught stacky stuff from offenses that look more projectable and less ambiguous. So that's kind of been my meta thus far. I've been doing a little bit of Seattle stuff, a little bit of Miami stuff, like these teams that I think the rules look more set in stone. I'll build like 5-man onslaughts because I know later in the draft window, I can gal brain my way to, okay, Mahomes is playing the Bengals in week 17. I'm happy to do Chase plus Mahomes and be like, chalk it up as like, there's my game stack, opposed to like right now, it just feels like naked Mahomes. Now what? Like just raw points kind of deal.
I think it's probably a mistake to go full naked Mahomes there, but I also think I like what the chat's saying, like Justin Watson time. Like one of the things about Mahomes in that offense, they do have like roles and a little bit of rotation. And when you're talking about the actual stack element, you're talking about the in-season, the like playoff 1 week peak, spike week potential. And Mahomes has definitely carried random receivers to spike weeks. Like that's something that we can try to backfill. It's trickier now that they have like clearer good receivers. Like the issue for me with Marquise Brown is like the 3 KC pass catchers have already come off the board, and I think they're the clear top 3, which is Kelsey, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. I think Marquise Brown starts to fall and should fall even further. I think in a couple months, Marquise Brown would be available to a Mahomes drafter at the 709, like in our position here. Right. He goes there in the 6th, but I think he's probably like a 7-8 turn guy at the close. Because Xavier Worthy is just such a good prospect and such overlapping skill set, and the hype on Worthy is just going to grow. He's going to go higher and higher. It almost makes you wish we would have taken Worthy first and seen if Mahomes came all the way back, which he wouldn't have. But it's tricky. The naked Mahomes thing is definitely not ideal, but I also don't think reaching on Marquise Brown when you don't really think Marquise Brown is the difference maker there, and especially if Xavier Worthy is the guy I think he is. You're talking about the late season stack. Yeah, Marquise Brown could get there, but I'm thinking that Xavier Worthy's really taken on a lot of that stuff in the late. So the thing about Marquise Brown is he signed a legitimately like a 1-year deal. And I think he is a play for early volume that they might bring Worthy along slow, and they might give Brown that veteran opportunity. The ways that they kept running Marquise Valdes-Scantling out there like for way too long. And they do seem to value veterans in those ways. But once Worthy makes himself indispensable to the offense, it's Marquise Brown who loses snaps. It's not Rashee Rice. Yeah. It's not Travis Kelce. It hurts Marquise Brown the most, I think. And they'll still have like a Justin Watson role and some of that stuff. The way that those guys block in the run game and stuff matters to them. It's, it used to be the DeMarcus Robinson role and the Chris Conley role and all that stuff. Like, so they won't play, I don't think, Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice a lot as the 3 receivers. I think it'll be so. Anyway, it's just a tricky price for Marquise Brown. I'm clearly tilting that we ended up with naked Mahomes.
Well, I mean, can we leave a light on in the 18th round to, take maybe not Sky Moore, but Kadarius Toney or something like that in the last round?
Yeah, I mean, even like a Kadarius Toney is like honestly.
Yeah, Noah Gray, maybe. People always jumping on Noah Gray. We're back.
I mean, I don't want to take Kadarius Toney in any regards, but I don't think it's right to end this draft with a naked Mahomes. And I do think the reason you can justify passing on Marquise Brown there if you really don't like the price. Oh, we're up.
Yeah. Najee, David Montgomery, Raheem.
I'm good with Montgomery as our first RB. Or
okay.
The falling value of Montgomery, we know the roles there. He's a fine first running back in late 7th. Like, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, we know his role. We know the volume's going to be there. Yeah, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is a star. Like, Montgomery's going to get touchdowns. He's going to get plenty. Like, that's a really nice first piece in a 0 RB build to me. I mean, there's something of a floor there, and we're going to be taking shots on ceiling guys later. I'm definitely comfortable scooping that fall.
I look in this range here, and like, I think you could say the same about Najee Harris there. I think maybe Pollard, you could say similarly, but that one's a little more ambiguous. I've been trying to scoop up some Trey Benson just in case that team is actually good this year. I know
Jaylen Warren just went, but I think both the Pittsburgh backs are going to get plenty of volume in an Arthur Smith offense. We're just talking about how annoying that is. They're both guaranteed volume in this range. DeAndre Swift signed a huge deal and is going to have the high value touches back that he didn't have last year. Couldn't catch as many passes with a mobile QB, and they did all those QB sneaks. I think he's an easy value at 88 ADP where he's going to catch some passes. They're going to run the ball in the red zone because they have a rookie QB. He's going to get some TDs. They have some other good running backs, but they have a good offense too. He's a lead back that just signed a big contract on a good offense. Raheem Mostert just led the NFL in touchdowns last year. I know they signed an exciting round 4 back, but they like Raheem Mostert. They're going to use him until he gets hurt, and then that's why they signed some depth, I think, or drafted some depth. But I mean, that's another he's going to get touches. That's a volume play for me. That I mean, a 20 TD running back in this range is crazy.
I was just about to say, we're so quick to forget that he set the franchise record for touchdowns last year. Okay, so between that conversation there, between Harris, Swift, and the money and the role, and Raheem Mostert and the touchdowns, which do you prefer, Gretch?
It's Swift and Mostert for me ahead of Harris. I would take Harris once those guys go off. I go either way there. I'm happy with either direction that you feel. I like both
let's do the
a
Swift
lot.
Then.
Yeah. Swift is probably the better, the safer play, right? He's the clear number 1. I mean, Mostert also has Achane there too. So, but I do think I mean, the fun stat I dropped when we talked about Mostert on the Stealing Banana show is that he had 21 TDs last year, he had 19 in his career prior to that. So when you think about like a 32-year-old back, you're worried about, he can't be the guy he was when he was 25. Raheem Mostert was nothing when he was 25. He's in his prime now, like whatever it is, but players have unique careers. Last year was the best year of his career, and it's not close. Like, it was easily the best year of his career. You can say, he's going to hit an age cliff, but I mean, compared to what? This is not us clinging to a player that was an 8-year star. It's this is really the window where he's in this offense and they use him in a way that he has more touchdowns in one season last year than he has in his whole career up to that point. That's still worth betting into, I feel like. But at the same time, Swift is the clear number 1. I think in Mostert's case, they're going to use him, is my point. They're going to ride him. They think he's a stud, but they also need to have a contingency plan in place for an injury-prone 32-year-old back. But it's not they're going to bench him. It's not other aging backs where, they're going to ride him as long as he is able to play. He just had a great season.
And he's still putting up outlier StatCast speed data, especially for his age. But you might have hit on something here. Is he the youngest 32-year-old back ever? I'm looking at his time at Purdue, and he had 700 yards at Purdue, where his rushing attempts he never went to triple digits in rushing attempts in his career in college. And then he comes into the league. He plays behind in the Shanahan stuff. He's 3rd, 4th guy, rotationary piece there, and then obviously the deal that gets him into Miami to follow his coach there. I don't know. He might be the youngest 32-year-old back. I can't think of anyone else who's had a later career breakout with such low usage on the front end of their career.
It is fascinating. The thing about the miles on the odometer is a little bit, because he's had a lot of serious injuries. He's had a lot of like broken kneecap and like weird stuff that I think it was like some type of weird like break in his knee one time, and all these other injuries where it's like, yeah, I mean, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a back that has that low of an odometer because he's had a bunch of injuries and he feels like he could get hurt on any touch, or, you know,
Mostert versus Zeke, you know, where it's like Zeke has had 300.
Well, I'm taking Mostert there
through college, through whatever, and now all of a sudden,
because at that point, you know, the player doesn't have it anymore. He is like, there's no juice. So your point is valid, where it's like he hasn't taken so many hits and everything that, like you said, the StatCast stuff is still there. The miles per hour with the ball in his hands, he's like, one of the things about just like getting tackled 10,000 times is you lose some stuff. You get all the soft tissue issues and the knots and everything in your body.
Dalvin Cook last year.
Mostert doesn't have that. You watched him last year. He looked more explosive than, I mean, Javonte Williams just won one pick behind him, and I'm high on Javonte Williams, but coming off a multi-ligament knee tear, Javonte Williams did not have the burst Raheem Mostert has, and not even close. And even though he's like 8 years younger, you know, like Mostert still had that burst.
This, sorry to kind of derail, but this looks like a very exciting spot for us just in terms of players available. Tyler Lockett jumps out to me. Trey Benson jumps out to me. Anyone else you would put?
Both of those guys are fine by me. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably go Benson and just keep building out this zero RB room. I really like the price on him behind James Conner. Conner's up, you know, been a really good like workhorse and done better, I think, later in his career than people realize as well. At 5 yards per carry last year, like his first 1,000-yard rushing season last year, you can make some of the same cases as the Mostert stuff, where it's like he actually is almost getting better with age. And so you can't just write off old players because they're old. Like, you got to think about, like, what do we see, you know? And we saw him actually play pretty good last year. At the same time, Trey Benson drafted relatively high, I think the second pick of the third round, and very clearly now they're running back of the future. They don't have anything else there. That depth chart is barren besides, I mean, they brought in Michael Carter midseason last year, but I don't think that's a threat really to the backup role. And if something happens to Connor, or just if they are ready to move some of the work another way late in the season and kind of shut Connor down, I mean, you got to think Trey Benson's one of those playoff, you know, week 15 to 17 hammers that you want to have in your zero RB build for sure.
Yeah, especially if that offense lives up to, you know, the expectations now that, you know, second year McBride, yada, yada. A lot of running backs staring us in the face here. Rashid Shaheed, if we scroll, Joshua Palmer, if we scroll.
No, we got to hit RB again over those names. I think,
okay.
Would you Jonathan Brooks?
Yeah,
the idea of having like a David Montgomery and a DeAndre Swift and some of that, you know, veteran volume is you can take both of these rookies now and really, I mean, that's an imposing late season running back room now that we didn't have to put a lot of capital into. I feel really good about Crutches picking behind us is not very happy about what we just did at running back. I feel really good about this ability to get some points early in the season and then also late for a zero RB build. Now, I mean, we do only have the 4 receivers, and I would have definitely thought about Sutton or Lockett if they swung back around there. They both went, and even AD Mitchell. And I'm not super high on Dobbs, but it's an interesting pocket for sure. It could have been a spot to hit our wide receiver 5 since we never did get another receiver in the mid-range. But I mean, we got a high-end QB, and we have to back. I think with the Mahomes thing, the more I think about it, dude, we need to be taking multiple shots late. So I think our receiver room needs to have like at least 2 late round Chiefs. Like maybe it's Justin Watson and Kadarius Toney. Maybe we're taking Justin Ross. I mean, I don't know what we're doing, but I think you do kind of need to be able to tell yourself a story that there's a late season spike week potential. I mean, maybe Marquise Brown was the move. I'm still scratching my head about that. The Xavier Worthy 1 pick ahead of us. I was just hoping that he would make it back.
This team would feel a lot better with Xavier Worthy right now. That being said, I mean, of those back end options you alluded to, they're all going to be available to us in the 17th and 18th round there. It's really hard to pick.
Oh my god, we have to take a tight end, dude. We could do Noah Gray, or we have to take. Yeah. They got Irv Smith. We could. I hate Irv Smith.
Yeah, I mean, leave the light on for post hype breakout for Irv Smith.
Oh man, the rest of this team slaps. Other than the fact that we don't have the KC stack. Like, I mean, if we finish this draft with Justin Watson, Justin Ross, and Irv Smith, it's our last 3 picks.
I think we should be fading zeros earlier in the BBM season, and we might just add 3 to our lineup every single week if we take those. Man. I can get on board with the late round 3rd tight end of Irv Smith and or Noah Gray, because there is some contingent upside there too.
Yeah, I do. I think there's more than contingent upside. I think there's rotational, like the way that they do the rotational stuff. I don't think I don't think it's burning roster spots. I think they do enough rotational stuff. They give guys like 40% route rates, and then you have the efficiency spike potential that you could get usable weeks even in the middle of the season. I mean, how many usable weeks did Justin Watson have last year? He was one of like 8 receivers that would run a lot. I think they're going to be more condensed this year, but there's a thing with like there's an element here that I'm definitely waiting, and I haven't necessarily like articulated, but that like their wide receiver 5 will run 40% of the routes, and other teams' wide receivers 5 won't, and then you have Mahomes, and you have the efficiency spike potential that player can on 40% routes can have a 15-point game or whatever. That's like a solid week.
So
I mean, it's not ideal, but.
Last year, Justin Watson had 3 touchdowns, so he was probably usable in week 9 with that 53-1. Maybe usable in week 14 with the 38-1.
Yeah,
it's grosser than I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, especially with their with their wide receiver room being kind of like more fortified. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. We got another pick here. We could add Sharps to this. It feels bad. I think it's probably time for another wide receiver. Pearsall or Leggett feel like they jump out. Jerry Jeudy gives us a back stack. Same with Rashid Shaheed. We could do a New Orleans back stack.
Yeah, you can do that. Let's do it.
So this becomes a Derek Carr potentially as the second quarterback team. Yeah. That feels fine.
Yeah, I mean, we already have Mahomes. Carr's cheap enough. I don't think he's like a great bet to have like a bunch of huge weeks, but we already have Mahomes. We want to go cheap. We want to go 2 QB, like, and Shaheed was a little bit of an ADP value, a small one, but
yeah,
I'm fine with it.
Okay, cool.
What you guys didn't realize about naked Mahomes is he's going to get us there, and then the Derek Carr double stack is how we're going to win in the playoffs. Figure it out. God, right. Keep up.
Keep up, boys. Any love for Leggett gives us a back stack too, and some divisional correlation. Any love for Ricky Pearsall's landing spot? We already got Kelsey, or we already got Kittle. Rather.
Yeah, I think those the Pearsall bet. In some respects, the Kittle bet already is like, I mean, there's a lot of upside if there's a trade of Ayuk or Debo, which do still seem possible. So if you take Pearsall, I think you're correlating an off-season move value jump for both of those players. I think it would be good for Kittle and Pearsall. And I like your Leggett call. I would have Leggett ahead of Pearsall in a vacuum. But on this team, seems like a fun little bonus bet to do Pearsall and Kittle together.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Are we buying anything with like the Jerry Jeudy trade and then instantly giving him a contract and money there? Like just having a longer leash, that sort of deal? Like, is he mispriced right now?
He's a draftable receiver in this range where there's not a lot of draftable receivers, but he's not something I'm going out of my way to get. I don't really love what we've seen in the profile. I don't hate it either, but I'm also concerned about him going to Cleveland, where Amari Cooper and David Njoku are both coming off career seasons, and they both set career high yards per out run. Both had really strong years. Even Amari, for as long of a productive career as he's had, set a career high. I mean, again, I've said on this stream multiple times that like the way that things play out next year doesn't have to match last year, and like an Amari fade where you think that he falls off or gets hurt or doesn't bounce back. His consistency has not always been there. Like that's not hard to buy. But I do like Njoku as being a big part of that passing game. I'm still kind of leaving a light on for Elijah Moore. They still want to be run heavy. They play outdoors, and we don't know if Deshaun Watson's good at football anymore. Like there's just a lot of stuff with Jerry Jeudy. The chat was asking about Blake Corum. I think he would have been a good pick there as well. I really like him. I think he's more of a pure handcuff, but the Rams are always so all in on the back that they have that if Kyron goes down, I think you really like Corum for that stretch, whatever it is. And so he's a nice upside piece. Would have been a good addition to a 0 RB build, but we already did hit 4 there, and getting a little more receiver depth, not a huge issue either.
Yeah, no, I like it. This feels like a 2 quarterback room to me when you go with the Mahomes one on the front, and with the Kittle one, I think 3 tight end is going to be fine if it's Noah Gray or Irv Smith with that last one. That feels like the little spike piece we could add there. So kind of planning for 2.
I love that. That's the way I would plan for 2, but leave open for 3 if it's the stack piece, right? Like
okay. And then the running backs, we got 4 right now. This is probably going to be 6 and or 7 to you. What do you like?
Yeah, 6 and or 7. We'll see.
Okay. Sounds good. We are starting to get into some iffy territory with everyone kind of thing here.
No, I like a lot of the running backs still. There's literally not a place in the draft where you could tell me that I would love to take Marshawn Lloyd. I'm okay with Ty Chandler. Go click on the running back list. I'll just start telling you. Like Kendra Miller is a very clear target this year. We were all in on him last year. He got hurt. They didn't add anything. It's still Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams in front of him. It's the exact same thesis, and he was banged up last year, but he's still a good player. And I think the fact that they didn't add anything is a positive sign. He's their running back of the future. He probably takes over midseason this year and is your guy down the stretch. He's too cheap. Ray Davis, great landing spot in Buffalo. Got to like having him. The Denver backs, both McLaughlin and I don't really want to get into Pirine because they drafted Estime, but like I was talking about the Bo Nix fit. Broke the collegiate completion percentage record last year. Very low ADOT stuff. It's exactly what Sean Payton's done in his entire coaching career. You can go back 20 years with Drew Brees, all short passing to the running backs. They're going to catch a ton of passes there. I think you can play him. Kamani Vidal for sure. Yep. I mean, those Chicago backups, I would take both Herbert and Roschon on a team where we didn't have Swiffle already, but I think they're both viable picks. There's a lot of options.
Beautiful. We're back up on the clock here. We could do the aforementioned Lloyd and or Miller.
What are we at tight end here? Do we want to try to before tight end completely dries? Oh, it's already dead.
Cade Otton, Hunter Henry, likely Jonnu Smith. Your boy Ben Sinnott.
I wouldn't rush those guys. It'd probably be Marshawn Lloyd for me unless you have a receiver that you like there.
Yeah, for me it'd be Marshawn Lloyd or just taking a swing on Roman Wilson. Obviously, don't know a ton about him outside of just, the Michigan stuff, the national championship, blah, blah, blah. But just a good complementary piece to be like the slot and underneath to the boundary guys. Like they got the field stretcher in Calvin Austin. They got the boundary guy in Pickens. And then he feels kind of like replacing that Deontay Johnson role potentially if things go right.
Yeah. I do like that case. We're already at 6 receivers and we're going to 6. What are we at? 2, 6, 8. So yeah, we got room for one more receiver. We could have taken him there.
He might come back.
I just anyways. I don't like. We were talking about Drake London earlier. You really want to take a receiver in a Arthur Smith passing game? I kind of don't.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's an entirely fair point there. There's another one that's going to be available here too that I would throw out. I'd throw out Luke McCaffrey as well. Or one of the tight ends. We could do like an Isaiah Likely contingent thing. We could do Ben Sinnott. We could do.
Don't like the way the Ravens used their tight ends last year. I mean, it would probably be Hunter Henry for me. Are you out on him?
I'm not sure yet because if you get like 3 or 4 games of Jacoby Brissett to start the year, I think that might be a good thing for Hunter Henry. Then come Drake May season later in the year, I don't know what to think of Drake May yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I'm
like in terms
I'm
of
pretty like into the potential for Drake May at least, and then just thinking that Hunter Henry is, I mean, pretty clearly going to be one of their main receivers. The other guys, I mean, they added a lot of receivers in the draft, or they used a lot of value on receivers. An early second round pick on Jalen Polk, a fourth rounder on Javon Baker. But they still, I mean, those guys are
brought in KJ
intriguing.
Osborne.
Brought in KJ Osborne, intriguing profiles, but none of them are like. And they also brought in Austin Hooper, but I don't know. I mean, I still feel like if you ranked it out, who's the number one most likely pass catcher on New England on a weekly basis? It's probably still Demario Douglas, even honestly. But
yeah, Ramondre Stevenson.
if there's if there's any kind of a hit with May, especially like later in the season, he starts to play well. I mean, we it's easy to be like, there's no way the Patriots passing game can be good because it's been so bad in the last few years. But if there's any potential for it to actually be moderately good, I mean, I think Hunter Henry is a fine tight end too. When you have a George Kittle,
it also low key opens us up to a backdoor stack here. If we somehow got froze out on Derek Carr, which I don't think we will, but we could do like a Drake May, Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry triple.
Yeah, well, I was talking about doing the stealing bananas drafts. We ended up with 2 backdoor Drake May.
You've already been down that rabbit hole.
I've been down that road 2 times in my 3 drafts so far, and we didn't take Hunter Henry yet. We took Javon Baker on both. One of them had Jalen Polk. One of them had Demario Douglas. I think we made one of them a triple and added Kendrick Bourne. It was listen. It was a decision.
It was creative.
Yeah.
We're getting unique out here. Yeah, Stevenson season. We are back for sure, Andrew.
Nez
was alluding that he liked it.
Where are we in relation to Carr's ADP? He's got to be coming up here pretty quick.
I think he's going to have to be our 177 here. Yeah. There's the quarterbacks are kind of, you just take your guy kind of deal, but he's a 198. Yeah, we could probably push it around the corner and take him at the 180 there.
Okay. We got our tight end 2. Any kind of KC stack option we want to do is going to have basically no ADP. Yeah. We do need to get another running back. And the thing about Marshawn Lloyd is he does feel like a kind of a pure handcuff. In hindsight, after I was so excited about Kendra Miller and then he went 1 pick behind us, I kind of was like, man, maybe we should have taken Miller. So I feel like there's more path to him just taking over the role from Kamara, or Kamara getting banged up, a little bit older, I think, than Josh Jacobs, who was their big signing. And the way that the Packers are probably envisioning Lloyd's role. Because we had Jonathan Brooks, I kind of feel like a little bit more like early season touch certainty would be a nice addition to our backfield. But that's not an easy thing to grab. I mean, Antonio Gibson gives you another path into the New England. I mean, we're already kind of into a little bit of a New England.
Yeah,
he probably plays. Henry. Yeah, okay. He probably plays a little bit behind. That's probably the answer there.
Okay. Yeah, the other one I would say is like, Bucky Irving, like they don't want to give all of those touches again to White, but Gibson feels
he would have been a good answer there too. Yeah.
I think Vidal already went. Hey, wow.
Yeah, he went.
Yeah, that's going to be the new norm that he gets pushed up there. The chat's asking about Keaton. This is one that I've done a couple times. Bindle's saying the Devonta Foreman late. I think you could get 4 weeks of Devonta Foreman being lead back to start the season while Nick Chubb's on the pup. I've done that one a couple times now.
Unless it's just Jerome Ford. Why wouldn't it just be Jerome Ford?
That's fair. Yeah.
That was their guy most of last season. I mean, I think it's probably Jerome Ford and then Foreman sort of insurance. The question about thoughts on Keaton Mitchell, I'm pretty into Keaton Mitchell, honestly. He His ACL tear was like a very clean one single ligament tear. They were able to go in and do surgery really quick. His rehab was reportedly all very positive, and he was exciting last year. I mean, you're coming back from an ACL, but everything about that, all the reporting around that has been very positive. So I think he's somebody you could be into.
Nice. Okay. That's the most bullish note I have heard thus far. We could try and push Carr further. There's a lot of quarterbacks left on the board here, including.
I think there is, but I don't have another strong pick here. Do you have another strong pick here? We only have 2 more picks after this, and at least one of them is going to be a random KC wide. It could be a wide receiver, I guess. It could be like Wandale or Bateman. Let's just take him.
Let's take Carr. Yeah, I like it too.
We're going to take a kind of off the wall KC stack piece that the chat thinks is a 0, but I don't think is a 0 because I'm stupid.
Well, let's start calibrating it now. Which do you think is going to be your favorite of the remaining between Justin Ross, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Noah Gray? We could still do 3 tight end. I'd be on board for 3 tight end with Noah Gray or Irv Smith.
How likely do you think it is that Kadarius Toney, who again got sent home and like deactivated in the freaking Super Bowl last year, and now they signed a guy in Marquise Brown who's like similar skill set, and then drafted a guy in Xavier Worthy who's like similar skill set? How likely is it that Kadarius Toney's actually on the roster week 1? Because it seems very unlikely to me.
Yeah, especially with like the off-field headache stuff that's been and the injury history. That's actually
because otherwise, like if you could make a case for that, I think he's the answer. But I don't think I can make a case for that.
Yeah, I mean they got a lot of just like bodies. Like they got Jacob Copeland, Anthony Miller, Nico Remigio. I don't even know who he is. Yeah. they just got like a lot of Montrell Washington is apparently on the roster. Shy Smith, former Panther, on the roster. They got a lot of bodies just in general. That's pretty hilarious. Yeah, they have 15 wide receivers listed here, Bindles, and Fortson is no longer one of them. That's
well, he's a tight end. Go look at tight end.
Oh, that's actually a fair point. I'm a fish. No, he's no longer there. There we go.
He's not on. He's with the Dolphins. That they're saying in the chat.
Yeah. They also drafted a tight end, which like in the 4th round this year, Jared Wiley. So maybe the Noah Gray / Irv Smith feels a little worse. I don't know anything about the kid coming out of TCU that was drafted in the 4th round, but
I can't believe how bad Justin Watson was last year.
It's astounding, right? Because it does seem like every time you're watching Red Zone, there was a shot his way. And you think that he caught a couple of them.
I mean, he had 54 yards in the Super Bowl. Not that that's a huge number, but he ran some routes in the Super Bowl, caught 3 balls, 54 yards. He ran some routes in all their playoff games. I'm looking at like who was actually playing down the stretch last year.
Mm-hmm.
Sky Moore was completely out of the offense. Was he inactive?
I think he was hurt. He was hurt. Yeah, he missed.
Because he's the other one where it's like, I mean, he's still on his rookie deal. He's cheap. They're not going to cut him probably. They might, but he was out from week 16 on. But like, if you're like, oh yeah, we're just a year late on Sky Moore, or 2 years late, or a career late.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's just add Visca to this and call it a day.
Yeah. Oh, man. Go back to the top of the wide receivers. I don't know what we do here, dude. Honestly, I don't know the answer to these backfill stack questions. We ruined our whole team with naked Mahomes.
It's not that bad. We can make it.
All of these other receivers are 0s too. I mean, I think we got to make not all of them. There's like Craig George, Rondell Moore.
I mean, there's a non-zero chance they could sign Tyler Boyd. There's a non-zero chance they could sign Zay Jones. Treylon Burks, trade candidate. A.T. Perry stacks with Carr if we want to triple stack it.
No, that's too thin.
Okay. I would throw DeMarcus Robinson, Zay Jones, or Boyd.
Zay Jones. You had that take earlier. I liked that take. We might as well just play into something that we talked about on the show. If he signs somewhere, he's going to sign with the Chargers. That's the take.
Yeah,
he's going to be interesting.
Nothing will bring a wide receiver core together quite like a Zay Jones signing.
So is the answer a tight end? Is it Noah Gray? Is it Travis Kelce got hurt and we now have the tight end stack? I think I do think the wide receivers are too thin. Having dug into it, I think Tony's too thin. I think Sky Moore's too thin. And I think Justin Watson's range of scoring last year is too thin, especially with the receivers they added. But if Travis Kelce gets hurt, you think it's this Jared Wiley guy? I don't know anything about Jared Wiley.
I don't know. I just put him in the queue.
Fourth round pick?
Yeah. This is where we need Crane. Someone in the chat tell us something nice about him. We could also do Chiefs backup running back, and we could take CEH.
That sounds bad.
We could just add D.
Yeah, you can just let's just do it naked if you want to. I'm fine with that.
Oh, D-Rob went right in front of us.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Tyler Boyd, Hyatt.
I would throw Dortch. Rondale Moore out here, or Greg Dortch. Yeah, those two guys would be my guys.
All right, Rondale, I clicked first. So Rondale it is.
So we got naked KC. This is
it's honestly like it sounds stupid in like the circles that we run in and the conversations that we have. It's not insane.
Yeah. I don't think it's insane either. I do think for Mahomes specifically, it's hard to justify his ADP if you're not stacking him. Like I think it's kind of like he's already probably overpriced. We got him at a pretty big discount to ADP. Yeah, I mean, when you get ADP value, sometimes you just got to take them. You know what I mean?
I mean, the thesis was strong too because we were waiting for it to come back around the corner. We pushed 2 Chiefs wide receivers around the corner. We just pretend that Marquise got taken on the other side, and then we had to make a scramble. If anyone ever asks about this team, it wins 100,000. You and I are meeting up for some beers. We're handing you 50 stacks into your hand. And we're just going to be like, yeah, remember that? That was hilarious that we got sniped on all 3 Chiefs on the other side of the board. We'll never share the draft board, nothing.
No. I will say, one more thought on Rondale Moore. I've talked about this at a few different places, but I thought he was at least an interesting ad for Atlanta in the sense of they brought over that Rams offense. The Rams immediately copied that exit motion stuff that Mike McDaniel was doing early last offseason, and were really good at getting Tutu Atwell free releases, even though Tutu Atwell is like 145 pounds. And he had some productive games until they decided they needed Demarcus Robinson on the field to run block more. I think they could use Rondale Moore in a similar way on some of that motion and get him a running start, and it could be productive for him for an undersized guy. Obviously, they do have Darnell Mooney too, but I think they'll play more a little bit. I think he could be kind of a shot play guy in that offense. It could be kind of interesting. I like to throw him onto the stacks when I've already taken Cousins. But yeah, no, I think that's a fun one. But
I like it.
I think the rest of this team is structured well. I will go to bat for. I mean, the chat's killing us for the KC thing, and that's fine. But I will go to bat for the structure we took, the way that we built the 4 early receivers, and how that allowed us to then. I mean, probably certainly in hindsight, I would have preferred to take a tight end instead of Mahomes, and had we almost took Pitts there. We could have went Pitts Kittle. And then we would have been, I really like when you can get the 2 premium tight ends in addition to that. We would have been stronger at tight end. But this running back room, I really, really like. I like the Montgomery, Swift, Benson, Brooks. I think Lloyd's, a fun handcuff if something were to happen to Josh Jacobs, tears his ACL. He's the guy that has an unfortunate injury this year. Then Lloyd's like their guy probably for most of the year. They also brought back A.J. Dillon, but they didn't want to. I think they just brought him back because he was really cheap, and they still drafted Lloyd. I think if something happens to Jacobs, you're pretty confident that Lloyd's playing quite a bit. And then Gibson, I don't really love or anything, but getting behind ADP, we had a little bet on Hunter Henry and New England being like competent offensively. At this time last year, the team that like no one thought could be competent was like Tampa Bay, and they ended up being like vaguely competent. Like Baker Mayfield was okay. Like there's too much certainty sometimes that a team's going to be like bottom 5 in overall offense. We made a little bit of a bet on them here. I liked a little bit of the bet on San Fran we did too with Pearsall. I mean, if Ayuk or Debo gets traded, it's a positive for both Kittle and Pearsall. I mean, I think this is a fun build other than the lack of a stack, which is a glaring issue.
Well, yeah, I mean it is, and we'll cope our way through it. But 10 picks past ADP, Mahomes, like I'm not sure how long fifth round Mahomes is going to be around. So maybe sometimes you just eat the raw points. Like we've played enough of the daily slates to just know that, like, hey man, naked quarterback gets there a lot when you're chasing ceiling, and sometimes it's contrarian enough. I mean, we could die on that hill of at least we were unique, Ben.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that can be said with them having a few more options and having a little bit of a spread offense and all that stuff. I mean, one of the things I saw in the chat, it was probably from Chipsy, who had like 97 comments about it. I think he was like, good luck with Mahomes getting there in week 17 without bringing anyone along. And I think that's a fair point. At the same time, with how spread everything is and the fact that they do have a lot of different guys, like it's possible Mahomes has a 30-point passing game and no one has more than 20 receiving. Like that's actually like, I can definitely see that. I can see the TDs being spread out to 4 different spots. It's not that it doesn't bring anyone along, but also it doesn't mean that the receiver was, a super necessary element to bank, right? Like you could have nobody really being that big of a smash. They're just like interesting pieces. And that is one of the values of stacking. Like, when your quarterback goes for 30, even if your guy only goes for 50, like Karain famously had Tom Brady and didn't have didn't have Evans, but had Godwin, and still Godwin hit his lineup with like a 15-point week, but Evans was the 30-point, explosion. It's nice to have anyone, because even if you have the second piece, it's a usable week out of that situation. But I don't think it's crazy that there's no massive spike week along with him as he goes off.
Yeah, no, I like it. You've coped me into feeling all right about this team. For the audio listeners, a 2-6-8-2 that was a 0 RB build. Myself and Gretch here. Mahomes, Derek Carr, David Montgomery, Swift, Benson, Brooks, Lloyd, Gibson, Garrett Wilson, Olave, Cooper, Kupp. Wow, that feels so nice. And Tank Dell as your first 4. That feels good. Rashid Shaheed, Pearsall, Zay Jones gets cut and signed by the Chiefs. Rondell Moore, and then Kittle and Henry. I mean,
Zay Jones to the Chiefs. They already got
Chiefs
97 receivers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Oh man.
It's good. It's good. It feels good. I wanted to drop this. Alex Keaton in the chat here, who was drafting neighbors in the 3rd round yesterday in front of us, suggesting some meta from the Travis Kelce podcast that Jared Wiley was working out at Camp Mahomes in Texas prior to the draft with Mahomes. So maybe Mahomes in someone's ear that, hey, we got to draft this kid after they were working out together in Texas, and that's why he's a 4th round pick. Successor to Kelce right there. Wow. Unbelievable.
Obviously, missed opportunity not taking him in the 18th. He was the piece to have. Oh man, what was this? Things I would have known yesterday. No, yeah, everything I said about Mahomes was purely cope, as the chat pointed out. We definitely should have stacked him.
Oh, hey, we tried. We tried our best. Gretch, thank you so much for doing this, man. You guys got ship chasing tonight?
We do. Yeah, we'll be here tonight.
Beautiful. Look forward to that alongside most of the chat. Do us a favor, guys. Hit that like, that subscribe, that notification bell on your way out the door. Hopefully we take down the big boy together there with Naked Mahomes, and then we can capitulate all next summer long as to why it's the new meta in BBM. All right, guys. On behalf of myself, on behalf of Gretch, we'll be back tomorrow doing baseball tomorrow with Easy. A slight schedule amendment that will be at 12 p.m. Eastern, slightly earlier. It's a big baseball slate. It'll be a lot of fun. Easy, sharp as hell. We will talk through some BBM stuff at the front end. Easy built a great stacking tool for BBM last year. He's going to kind of like talk us through that, and he's used it a little bit to start this year. Maybe he can show us some more there. But outside of that, anything you want to say, Gretch?
No, man, this is a blast. Thanks for having me on.
Love it, man. Anytime. All right. Appreciate you guys. Peace. Everybody's favorite time on the show. The end.